can we know the people we love? And here I was fascinated by the idea of what does it mean to really know someone? What does it mean if you're standing up and you are that witness? And what happens if no one actually knows who your witness is?
Welcome to our latest episode of Book Reporter Talks to. Our guest today is Laura Dave, a repeat guest, a three-time repeat guest, I'm so happy to say, who's going to be talking to us about her latest thriller, The Night We Lost Him. Oh my gosh, this is so good. I'm talking to Laura before she goes on book tour, and before she's going on book tour cross country, everybody. So really check her site. She's going to be a lot of places. And we don't have our book reporter review yet, but I went out and looked for some praise from some other sources. Oprah Daly says the last thing he told, no, the night we lost him forces us all to consider what happens when we discover gaps in the stories we long assumed to be true. And author Rebecca Searle says Dave is the founder and master of a new kind of thriller. And I agree on this, one that sets love, not death, at the fulcrum, a tour de force of emotion. And with that, welcome, Laura. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you, Carol. I always look forward to it. So thank you so much for having me again.
Love this book. I just sat down and love this book, and it's different from the other books you've written. I mean, while you're in the thriller genre like you were with your last book, we're still in a different place. So let's start about you talking to us a little bit about The Night We Lost Him.
Well, so for me, this book was born from a question, which is, what does it mean to be the witness to someone's life? And I knew that everything was going to be circling around that question, but I didn't know very much going in beyond the initial plot, which is that two estranged siblings join forces following their father's untimely death to try to discover what actually happened to him. And in the process, learn that they didn't really know very much about the man that they thought they knew, and realize who he actually was.
You know, it's really interesting because they don't know that much, and it's about a very public figure in a lot of ways. And
Mm-hmm.
the two of them are from different marriages. We'll get into that in a little bit. But the fact that they are discovering all these things about their father at this point is so interesting. I know you take a lot of inspiration for your books from real world events. The
Yes.
last thing you told me was the Enron scandal and how you
Yes. Yes.
actually thought about that for many, many years before you wrote the book. Was there
Yes.
real life inspiration for The Night We Lost Him?
There actually was, and I can tell you what it was off camera after, because once I tell you, you're gonna be like, oh, I see that. It has something to do with the twist. What I'll say for your viewers is that again, it's based on sort of a true succession battle that was happening in the world. I should say inspired by, because it dramatically deviates, but I was reading about the succession battle that was happening after the death of the head of this corporation. And I thought, oh my goodness, I had been percolating in my mind this question of what does it mean to be the witness to someone's life? And I thought, well, there's a way in if I think about it this way.
Yeah.
And that really also, I love taking inspiration from something that's happening in the real world, and then thinking about that person and then adding, all sorts of psychological verisimilitude and pulling from all sorts of places. Once I find like a kernel of something like with Enron, I was so fascinated by the idea of, can we know the people we love? And here I was fascinated by the idea of, what does it mean to really know someone? What does it mean if you're standing up and you are that witness? And what happens if no one actually knows who your witness is?
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, I see that now. The witness of what's going on, because there's so much that's going on in this book. You know, the book has a secret that's hidden for 50 years, and
Yeah.
I found that so interesting. And I love the way it wove in and out of the story. Was that something that came to you early in your writing? Did you know I'm going to weave this, or it's going to come out bigger at the beginning?
I always wanted to tell a love story over the course of a lifetime. In this case, the two people that Liam, the father who has the suspicious death, and the woman whom he loves, which is all tied up in the family secret. I that had been something I've wanted to do for years. So I had been playing with it. And Liam and Corey actually came to me before the front story did. So I have actually like 150 pages of their story that actually aren't even in this book. And I just really wanted to look at what it is like if there's someone who knows you, who truly knows you.
Mhm.
Um, but I didn't know exactly how that was going to fit in. And I didn't know that until I started writing both I wanted the past, the flashbacks to speak to the present and the present to speak to the flashback, almost like Easter eggs, so that
Mhm.
if when you finish the book and you know what happens, you want to pick it up again and you're like, oh, now I see. I see how that hint is there, how that Easter egg is there, how that clue is there. So they were always speaking to each other. And you know this, Carol, I never know what's going to happen when I sit down to write. So
Mhm.
writing for me is that process of rewriting. And when I got to the end and saw how the stories merged and deviated and spoke to each other, it becomes a process of I throw out so much and then I begin again, knowing the connections.
Wow. So then you see what I don't need. I don't need this
Yes.
part. I can hold back here. I can push here, what I can do. You know,
Yes.
and it was interesting that you say that about wanting to reread, because that's what I was doing this morning, because I'd read it and I was
Mm,
actually listening to the audio, which we'll talk about later as well. And I picked up the book and I was reading and I saw more of what you did along the
mhm.
way. And I think it was a very interesting. There were things that you see at the beginning, and there's like a kind of prologue kind of thing, and there's kind of another chapter. And then you see later on how that all plays in. But at the
Yes.
beginning, you're just, okay, I got these facts. I've got this stuff. I know about
Mhm.
this person. And then from there we go, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I start the way this book started for me was I knew two things going in. I knew that the father, Liam Noone, we were going to meet him in Carpinteria, California. I'm not spoiling anything. This happens
Hmm.
on the first page.
Hmm.
And he is going to fall to his untimely death. And the question is, was he pushed? And we as readers know that, in fact, he was.
Hmm.
But we don't know anything else. So I knew that. I knew that he died not by his own hand. And it wasn't an accident. And then I knew that the two estranged siblings were going to meet again for the first time in years in that first chapter because they are suspicious, particularly Nora, the narrator's younger brother, is suspicious
Hmm.
that, in fact, their father was killed.
Hmm.
And that's all I knew going in. And so I started with those two scenes. I wrote those two scenes. And then what for me I love about writing is that sense of discovery. And I always hope that if I'm surprised while I'm going, then the reader gets to feel that
Hmm.
sense of surprise. So I feel like I'm really in conversation with these characters. And the more I get to know them, the more I realize where their stories need to go.
Right. I love when, Nora and Sam are meeting up and
Yeah.
she's very skeptical of like, why do I, and the way that they meet up is even funnier. It's like, wait, you're with
Yeah.
who? What's going
Yeah.
on? I'm not giving anything away, folks. But she's just like, wait, now I have to speak to you. Now I actually
Yes.
have to talk to you. Now you're actually part of this project that I'm working on. And then you
Yes.
have what kind of an idea? And part of it is written in the first person. And we'll get to that in a bit too. But
Mhm.
it's as a result, you're seeing this from these two POVs. Like she's telling you
Mhm.
what's going on. And then there's this third person thing happening over here. So you're always in her head, which I absolutely loved. But by the same token, why do I want to hang out with this brother? Why do I
Yes.
believe anything that is coming out of his mouth? We've been estranged
Mhm.
our entire life. His mother didn't even want me at his wedding. His mother-in-law didn't even want me there. So, like, what is like my whole place in this whole thing? And why do you care about telling me? And what am I supposed
Yes.
to do? Is her
Yeah.
attitude.
Yes, and I love that because I loved exploring that because there's such a interesting dynamic with siblings that is something that I've always been interested in with writing, which is there's a familiarity no matter how estranged you are. There is something that you know about someone and yet you might not know them or like them at all, but
Mhm.
like you share some of this common DNA, both actually and metaphorically, because, someone was saying to me recently, even if you grow up in the same house as your siblings, you're not raised by the same parents.
Mhm.
that was so interesting. And I
Mhm.
think it's really true because the parents that your older sibling gets is different than the parents that come to you. And yet there's a language that the two of you share that no one else would ever understand.
Mhm.
And so here, because they grew up in different homes, because they have the same father and different mothers, it's almost like two things are going on at once. We get to see the language that they have two totally different languages, and yet we get to see them find their way to the kernel of what draws them to each other.
Yeah.
And that was a love story that I always wanted to dig into.
Yeah, and it's the two of them are looking like, well, wait, what do you know? What do you know?
Mhm.
How are you treated? What happened
Yes,
to you? Oh,
yes, yes, yes,
you get what the company? I'm like, I don't care. Like it's
yes,
no big deal to
yes,
me.
yes,
And there's a lot in here about architecture, which
yes.
I absolutely loved, especially neuroarchitecture. So let's talk about that because it's really at the hum of
Mhm.
what he liked to do with the properties he had.
So first of all, I love the word hum for to describe it because neuroarchitecture, with all of my novels, but particularly with the last couple that focus on suspense and mystery, um, I like to take a normal person, in this case, Nora Noone, who you turn up the dial because she finds herself in an extraordinary circumstance.
Mhm.
But for her to be believable as the person that then solves this circumstance, she has to look at the world in a different way. And giving her a profession like neuroarchitecture really allows me to imbue in her the characteristics of what a neuroarchitect needs that also allows her to lean into the mystery in a way that other people might not. So for neuroarchitecture, that was something I came to at the beginning of the book. I knew that I wanted her to be an architect who looks at architecture differently,
Mhm.
that it's not about creating the most um, you know, glamorous structural space, but it's about creating spaces that can heal its inhabitants both physically and mentally, which is actually a whole discipline within architecture that I discovered when I was working in the book called neuroarchitecture,
Mhm.
which is, the founder of it created the Salk Institute, which has a lot to do with polio. And he's credited as the founder, but it actually is a very new discipline. And when I learned that, oh my gosh, this is a real thing, because I thought I was leaning into like almost a fictional or magnanimous view of architecture. And when I learned it was a real thing, I sort of stopped the writing. I spoke with several architects who focus on neuroarchitecture, and I learned a lot about it so that I could understand exactly how Nora would see the world and
Mhm.
how it would lend itself to her solving this mystery.
Yeah. And it's also how her father respected her because she
Exactly.
did something. She did what he did, but amped it up. She took it to a
Yes.
new level, but he was
Mhm.
really concerned. I love the part where there was supposed to be a property that opened and it
Mhm.
didn't open because there was noise by the pool
Yes.
and he had to figure out what to do and he moved the people. And
Mm.
I love people who care enough about what they're doing that they will
Yes.
take a financial risk, they will take something else to make it perfect. And it
Well,
doesn't happen enough.
I love that. And I think that that's really true. And you just actually connected the kernel of something that is the flashback
Mhm.
present storylines, which is she walks into this world of learning about her father, thinking that she doesn't have anything in common with him. And in fact, they have a lot in common.
Mhm.
And one of the things that they share the most that is such a powerful indicator of how they view the world, each of them, is about using space as a way to welcome people, to
Mhm.
like for a space to hold them. The father in the book, we've alluded to this, but he is a hotel magnate, but
Mhm.
he doesn't own hotels that are large in scope. He owns hotels that are boutique and luxury and that really cater to each individual person. So in a very similar way to his daughter, he is creating space that is comforting. And I
Mhm.
love that they have that in common. And it's a language that they touch on in their life, but especially after his death, it is something that still connects her to him.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's going to be something that's left to her that
Yeah.
will definitely show that as well, that kind of
Yes.
understanding. So let's talk
Yes.
about the father. It's Liam Noone. He begins his life in Ditmas Park, Brooklyn, and his
Yep.
properties include places on the West Coast. In fact, the first place he goes is to the West Coast. He's
Yes.
not going to build any place nearby. And he bought a piece of property on in California, a craftsman home. And the way you describe this home is just so perfect. And it's the place where he was when he
Mhm.
died. It's a place of
Yes.
solace for him. And he's got lots of thoughts there. And what is set up at the beginning with a chapter that I went back to read, there's so much there about what that place means to him.
Mhm.
So when you're reading, you're going to feel this emotion about this guy who's got everything. He could do a big hotel, he could do whatever, but this is the place that means something to him, and you figure out
Mhm.
why.
Yes, exactly. I think that with the specificity of how he approaches he approaches his work, there's a real love story for what he tried to build and how he tried to build it.
Mhm.
And that also is going to play into the secret of who he loves and why,
Mhm.
and ultimately, unfortunately, his death. It's all tied together.
And also, it's set up with this beginning chapter that you go back and read at the end, and it has different meaning for you. Because when you're
Yes.
reading it going in, you feel one way, and then you're like, wait a second. And a lot of times, authors set up prologues for a reason. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, I feel I want to go back and read them at the end
Yes.
because there's a reason it was there for the setup, but you might not completely have enjoyed. You got it, but you didn't really get the whole thing. Am I
Yes.
right?
Well,
You
so
know?
something that happens in the prologue is that before he dies on page 2, so again, I'm not spoiling
Yeah.
anything, he starts to remember all these moments in his life. And we hear him remembering what he did wrong at 60, what he did wrong at 58, what he did wrong at 30. And those moments that he's remembering are actually this is a little bit of an Easter egg just for your viewers. Those are actually the moments we're going to see in flashback.
Hmm.
What he's remembering in that moment is what
Yeah.
we're about to see in flashback.
Yeah, and you sit there and you read it carefully, and then you go back and read at the end. Did that chapter change as you wrote, or did that stay pretty much the same?
That chapter, nothing changed except 3 words in the first line.
Wow.
So that chapter has really remained a constant.
Yeah.
It was for me, and often that's the case for me with a prologue and a first chapter, because those are the things I sort of see that lead me into the story. And so
Mhm.
sometimes they alter, but particularly for this book and for the last thing he told me, those did not alter. They were almost my guidepost for where I wanted to go next.
Right, right.
E.L. Doctorow has this great quote that I keep on my desk upstairs when I'm writing. It lives up there. That's the desk I use when I'm writing. And about how writing a novel is like driving a car at night. You don't have to see further out than your headlights.
Yeah.
And I always think of the first chapter as my headlights. That's
Hmm.
where I need to see and know where I'm going so that I can keep driving.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's like I need to know here because the reader
Yeah.
only needs to know here, and then we can go.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Liam was married 3 times. He had a daughter from the first marriage, 2 sons from the second, but he kept the family separated. But he
Hmm.
did spend time with his daughter. He did go
Yes.
to her events at school. He did go
Hmm.
to moments that mattered to her. So let's talk
Yes.
about that as a character of him, of keeping everybody separate. There are reasons for it, but why? You know?
That's a great question. I did a lot of research when I was trying to understand um, men who run a corporation like the corporation that Liam runs in the book, and who find themselves in like an extraordinary position of power.
Mhm.
And there's so many of these gentlemen who do marry several times and yet keep once you're sort of in their inner circle, you're always in their inner circle.
Mhm.
And yet, at the same time, in order to function the way they function, they compartmentalize. And I think that's a very male trait, that compartmentalization. I think women, as women, I see it, at least in my own life, anecdotally, far less.
Mhm. Mhm.
You never hear of women having secret families
All right.
because it's an impossibility. We operate in this really large relational way.
Right.
Um, and I was really interested in both the limitations and the intimacy that Liam has with each family because he compartmentalizes in that way.
Mhm,
In
mhm.
some ways, it's a more limited understanding of who his daughter is. And also, he gives very focused time when he's actually there, which is this weird juxtaposition and paradox that she has to live with at the end. And it's why she and her brother are able to fill in pieces together because
Mhm.
they both got a third of the same man.
Yeah, yeah. And he's got a brother, and the brother's in a different kind of place on the whole
Yes.
thing. He wants the power that is, they want to
Yes.
know what happened. They want to
Yes.
know what went on.
Yes.
She's got these great memories of him. And I like that he was as empathetic as possible, for someone who left people along the way. And you saw
Yes.
exactly what you're talking about, is that he compartmentalizes because he was very empathetic towards her. He's proud of her. He wanted to be
Yes.
there for her at these times. And you could just picture him saying, block off that time on my calendar. That's that. And
Yes.
no matter what he was doing, it was really interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the money, it's the property itself. And in your research, did you meet people that actually said it's really about the way the property feels? It's like in this neuro way of looking at
Mm.
architecture. Is it really like, I can't do that because that won't work for everybody?
Absolutely. And it's, everything, it depends on the axis in which you start the building process,
Mhm.
but it always has to do with creating rounded corners, creating enough accesses of light, and windows that open. This whole thing now uh, with offices that, have closed windows and forced air and all the
Mhm.
rest of it.
Mhm.
That's a very new invention and actually is the opposite of a comforting space.
Course,
They
yeah.
did it because it saves money. That way air conditioning stays inside, heat stays inside. But something that Nora architects often look to do is windows need to open. There needs to be light from all these different angles, and it needs to be a piece of property that is healing.
Mhm.
You're not going to be ideally on the edge of a highway, as an example. You're going to have space, you're going to have trees, you're going to have nature. And that becomes so important for both how Liam builds his hotels and for how Nora looks to build her houses, her drug rehabilitation centers, everything that she's doing as well.
Yeah. There are towns, I know there's in Beaver Creek, Colorado, there's a design review board that looks at
Oh,
everything, and you
I
have
love
to have
that.
it signed off on what
Yes.
you're going to do. And we were there recently. We hadn't been there since like 2013. And
Mhm.
in 11 years to see how the place still looks the same. And I remember one time I was building an author website, and I
Mhm.
said to him, well, right now you have Vale, which means it's all over
Mm.
the place, all different things. And you need Beaver Creek. You need it to all look
Oh,
the
I
same.
love
And he
that.
goes, now I got it. Now I got
Yeah.
what you're talking about. And my sister-in-law was here yesterday, and she was taking a walk around the neighborhood, and she says, all the houses here are different. Like, it's not like when you build a community where there are
Yes.
four different kinds of
Yes.
homes or whatever.
Yes.
And I said, yeah, these homes are like much older. And we were talking about how that changes how the whole thing feels, because you're not competing with this person who has the same house as you next door. And what did
Mhm.
you do? Everything's different.
Yeah.
Everything's,
Well, because what you're really talking about there and what's so important is that everything feels authentic then,
yes.
as opposed to created in a way like for uniformity. And
Mhm,
that actually there's so much breathing room that comes with that in
mhm,
both how the houses speak to each other in your community
mhm.
and in how your house exists on its own. Both things are happening in a much more comfortable way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's different. And then what everybody did with it from there, where they played with it from there. And she says, most of these houses have additions and changes on them. Like, yeah, they're 50 years old. They were,
Yes.
things change. You can point to
Yes.
like what happened with our house, what we did. And it's just interesting because you see how people made it more their own, which is not sort of neurodiverse architecture, but in some ways it is, because you take a
Mhm.
room and say, I need this to be here, and I need this to be here in order to be comfortable. And
No, and that
even
is.
playing
Yeah.
around with my office, I'm changing things like all the time just to make sure it's better for the lighting, the this, the that.
Mm. Yes,
Like right
exactly.
now, I do realize I left the overhead light on. Okay, so we've got these start to look into the death, and they've got this tentative relationship. And this tentative relationship reminded me of Hannah and Bailey
Oh,
going
that's
on
interesting.
their own tentative relationship in the last thing he told me. And
Hmm.
what draws you to writing these characters that don't really trust each other? Like he's saying to her, get on the plane tonight, the red eye.
Yeah.
And she's just there like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not going to do this. And it's the same thing as Bailey fighting against Hannah. I'm not going. I'm not going to do this. You can't make me, you know?
Well, I really like looking at people who are thrown together by familial bonds, but not traditional ones. What I mean by that is, in so many ways, obviously, well, there's so many ways that I shouldn't say obviously, there's so many ways that found families come together.
Mhm.
And I love the idea of honoring love stories that don't look like traditional love stories. With Hannah, she becomes the mother that Bailey always needed, and Bailey becomes the daughter that she didn't know if she could mother. And so they really fit a key and a lock for each other that they both desperately needed. And in the night we lost him, the last thing that uh, Nora and Sam think they're signing up for and trying to solve what happens to their father is that they think this is a transactional kind of situation. And they didn't anticipate that they were going to really be for each other something the other needed to get
Mhm.
out of the past and move forward in their lives.
And that's exactly what's happening is they're able to communicate with each other to push each
Mhm.
other to a different place. But that's not what
Yes.
they go in. And you
Yes.
watch them evolve as the story goes on. But she's kicking and screaming at the beginning, like, I'm not getting on that plane tonight. Like, no, if I do, I'm coming back tomorrow. It's like,
Absolutely. Well, I think that part of it too, and this is something I try to play with, uh, you know, with how I write mysteries is very often, and I love mysteries. I love all kinds and I read them all, but you find out that the people that you mistrust, there's elements of revenge or waking up next to your husband and realizing he wasn't who you thought he was. And in some ways, I like to do the opposite. I like to start with someone that you think is never going to come through for you and move that through the mystery, and on the other side you realize this person was exactly who you needed.
yeah. And for both of them, that's exactly where they end up going.
Yeah.
So Nora's written in the first person. What drew
Yes.
you to do that? Somebody's got to be in the first person. Somebody's got to be like present for you.
It's it I I have found that in recent years it is easier for me to tap into storytelling. What the storytelling that I love reading the most are books that I feel like are being read to me out loud. Like I love that experience. I love that feeling. And I try to write books in that way, that you don't want to put it down. You want to keep going. And something about the first person and the present tense makes that storytelling more immediate for me and
Mhm.
helps me hopefully write a book in that way.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a love story woven through the book, but there's actually more than one. There's the
Yes.
father-daughter, there's the other
Yes.
mystery one that we're not going to discuss, and there's one that needs time to mature enough to work. There's a love
Yes.
story that lives over time, and there's
Mhm.
one that needs to be undone for another one
Yes.
to happen. So
Yes.
I'm seeing three as I was going on. Did they happen organically or were they changed along the way? Because each of them could have gone in a different direction. Every single one. One needed to be there to hold the story together, but the other two could have just gone on with their lives.
Yeah.
But they had to have change too.
It did happen organically, but I'm very interested in triangulation in all of my books and in the way that sometimes we get in our own way. But I have never seen a love triangle before where the problem is actually the person.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning sometimes we can get in our own way. And that's the third piece that's keeping the love story from coming together. And I really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to explore that. And in different ways, that is the story that is going on in all three love stories in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to look at the different ways that that gets resolved, whether you figure out how to show up for yourself, or if you don't, how those endings can shift.
Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes you just need time. You need time
Yes.
away to sit there and
Yes.
say, that is really what I wanted. And that
Exactly.
really happens in all three
Yes.
at times. You
Yes.
can't give too much away. I
Yes.
also want to stay at these hotel properties because they sound amazing.
Yes.
And I will
Yes.
tell you that a couple of weeks ago, we went out to Beaver Creek and I was online looking at places at the condos we were going to stay at, like we were
Mhm.
buying them. And my
Yes.
husband's going, what is this? And I go, that red couch will make me nuts.
Yeah.
That thing over there is going to make me crazy. And we ended up in one that I really liked. And my friend goes, what are you going to do if you get there and they've like changed everything? I said, I'll be down at the front desk saying, you've got to
That's
find me another one
amazing.
like it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I said, it's the environment where you are matters so much to me that if
Mm,
it's not good, it's not going to matter. Are you particular about where you stay? I mean, like when you're on tour, you stay where you stay, but do you
mm.
like gravitate towards places where it feels great?
So, it's so funny that you asked that because I, when I was 20, I didn't care.
Right.
And as I've gotten older and have a family, and my environment matters to me so much,
Hmm.
and feeling that a room is holding me, feeling comfortable, really has a huge influence on my ability to work well, to parent well, to do all of it. So I understand exactly what you're saying. And I think part of the reason I created this luxury boutique hotel brand in the book is that's what I dream of. I want to go to those hotels in the book. I did
Right.
so much research while I was working on the novel, and went to different hotels and spoke with different hotel managers and figured out this is how they do what they do. It's so much work. The hospitality business is
Yes.
so involved. And I just wanted to sort of capture the magic of getting to a place and feeling held in that way. Because
Hmm.
there's anxiety now when you go somewhere, and especially, we were chatting before we got on about your sons and having grown children, and you know, you get limited time with the people you love,
Hmm.
and you want it to be special, especially when you're planning it. And
Right.
so you want that when you show up somewhere, it feels great to you in a
Hmm.
different way, I think, than when we're young and we're like, we can sleep on the couch in the back of a train, we can sleep wherever. We want that comfort.
Yeah, my son who was sleeping in his friend's Land Rover as he drove around the UK. I mean, I was like,
Yes,
this has zero appeal to me, like zero.
yes.
Can I put my things
But we,
tighter?
but that was us. We were that.
We would
I
do
could
it.
do
We would do
that.
whatever
I
we
used
had
to
to
be able
do.
to do that.
I also remember being in a hotel in San Diego for Comic-Con and
Mhm,
saying to them, empty the refrigerator. And they were
mhm.
like, what? I said, just take everything out because I'm going to go buy yogurt and fruit and all this stuff because I know what's going to happen during this. And they were just looking at me like I was insane. And I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
no, just please take care of this
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'll be like on my merry way. And I always liked the places where they understood that that's what you're going to do. And unfortunately, it usually only happens at high-end hotels that they
Yeah.
actually get this is what you're talking about, what you want, you know?
I was just we were just in Europe a couple of weeks ago because I am working on the sequel for The Last Thing He Told Me.
Mhm.
And I was doing research. I do so much research, for every book. And I was going to the places that Hannah is in Hannah goes in the sequel. And when I got to the hotel in Paris, they must have done some research, and they made me a cake that looked like the night we lost him, like
Oh,
that.
wow.
And it was this most incredible, and the welcome that made me feel,
Yeah.
and knowing I'm feeling known like that. I'll never go stay anywhere else in Paris after that. Like
Right.
it was so remarkable. And I love the idea that Liam Noone's Hotel Empire in the book does that for their guests. I just
Mhm.
love that.
We checked in with this hotel. They handed me a business card and they said, if you need anything, you can reach us. And I was like, oh, I just love this. Okay,
Sorry about
you're there.
that.
I said, I just love this. I said, because you want to know that somebody can connect. Can you print my speech? Can you print what I'm going to need to do? I'm out there to do a eulogy. Can you figure this out for me? And it was like all these little things were just, I can relax. They have it
Yes,
under control. And the
that
cake, oh my
yes.
gosh, they know you well. You know what I mean?
Yes. And I have no idea how they knew, but it was really special.
That's
Yeah.
really great. That's great
Yeah.
research on their part.
Yeah.
That's really great. I'm sure your
If
son
I
was like, wow, this is really cool, Mom. We've got the cake with your
He
book on
loved
it.
it. If I could go back, if I had gone there before, that would have made its way into The Night We Lost Him because it
Yeah,
was so
yeah,
lovely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. One of those little things, one of those little things. So, was it any easier for you to write your second mystery thriller? Was it, I kind of knew what I was doing. Well, you thought about the other one for 10 years, but
Yes.
this one you didn't have that much time, not much of a
Yes.
runway.
In some ways it was easier, and then in some ways it was harder. One of the challenges here that I loved trying to meet was telling that love story over 50 years.
Mhm.
That was a unique writing challenge and one that I loved. And that was certainly in some ways harder than the last thing he told me. I think there's layers upon layers of family stuff in this one that I always want to be challenging myself as a writer. But, with the last thing he told me, whenever you're embarking on something new, I wasn't even sure I was going to be able to write a mystery in that way. So I had more confidence going into this one. That certainly was easier.
Yeah, like I did it. I did it
Yeah.
once. I think I could do it
Yes,
again.
I
Here we
can do
go.
it.
So Nora talks about how her mother said what you did first thing in the morning is the most important to you.
Yes.
And you write early in the morning. I know you get up at
Yes.
like 5 and you write till like 10. Do you
Yes.
feel that assigning your writing to that time guides what you do? Like if you have a good writing day or whatever, this is my focus for these hours.
So I love that question. And part of the reason that I write first thing in the morning is that then I know that whatever else happens that day, I've honored what's most important to me besides my family,
Hmm.
which is writing. And the internet, busy work, other things can all come later,
Hmm.
but I've done what matters the most to me.
Hmm.
And I've honored that because when I started writing after I left graduate school, I had spilled water on my computer and I lost the whole thing. I think we've chatted about that. And what I did in that time was I had to get a ton of other jobs in order to support myself, but I kept the morning free to work no matter what, even if that meant I was working late at night and in jobs that paid me. And I think it taught me that writing was the most important to me.
Hmm.
And I think it's a lesson you have to remind yourself of again and again. When young writers reach out to me and say, I'm trying to write my first book, do you have any recommendations? I say the number one recommendation is that, suggestions is that writers write. So
Yeah.
whatever that looks like to you, find the time that you can honor that. And for some people, that means 2 hours twice a week, but stay loyal to the 2 hours twice a week
Hmm.
because that's how you're going to get somewhere with your work.
It's like going to the gym. If you don't go every day or if you don't go on a schedule, nothing's going to change. You can
Exactly.
only do it if you change. And I do
Exactly.
love that it's like the rest of the day. Does your rest of the day have that much structure to it? Or is it,
Well, my number one structure after that is that I'm with my son from the time he's home, and
yeah.
sometimes that means 3 hours of baseball practice and whatever that looks like. So I have the window between 11 and 3 when I go get him to it looks a whole lot of different ways
Right.
every day. And when I'm lucky, I get to squeeze in some reading time, which is my big joy. Sometimes that has to wait till after he's asleep at night. But when I'm having a day when everything has sort of gone smoothly, I get a half an hour of day reading in, and that's very joyful.
It's funny when my younger one was playing baseball, he goes,
Mhm.
Mom, I'm not really good, that good. And
Yeah.
I'm totally aware of that. He was a good pitch hitter to get everybody in at the end. He says, but you know
Yeah.
why I get picked? He
Yeah.
goes, Dad will coach and you'll sit in the stand and talk to the moms about books and you'll
Oh,
bring books. So
yeah.
that's the reason. So I figure you in the stands, whoa, this is
Yeah.
like huge. This is like, all right, when we're picking for the team, yeah, he can hit, but man, that mom, she's going to be sitting there talking about books
We
and going on tour. Think about that.
I have to say, I love my fellow baseball moms. I love, I feel like people sometimes complain about how long games are and everything, but I love being there. There's nowhere I'd rather be. And we talk about books and cooking and our kids. And it's such a joyful, I find the baseball field to be so joyful.
It's like this bonding moment that you're just sitting there and you're in the stands together. And it's
Yes.
also really funny because whoever son is pitching when it's a really tough game goes, I have to leave. Like I have to
Yeah.
go. I cannot watch this. It's too hard. Oh my
Yes,
gosh, look what
exactly.
he did. And we'll go, oh, he'll be better next.
Yeah.
Everybody's always encouraging because if there's a point where every parent thinks their kid is going to be playing professional baseball
I
and then
mean,
reality hits and
yeah.
it doesn't hit for a while.
Yeah.
And at one point, like they may do travel baseball, and that is just like the torture of parents. And you just sit there going, please let him not make the team. Please let
Exactly. That's so funny. That's so funny.
you'll see as
Yeah.
this goes on. And I also know you love to cook. And I felt that
Yes.
Jack, being a character who loved to cook, gave you a chance to talk about food. Am I
Yes.
right? And are you happy that you got to throw some meals in there? Yeah, let's put
I
some.
really am. The strawberry pizza that Nora's fiance in the book, Jack, who they have their own journey in this novel. He is the kind of chef that I love the most, you know, farm to table, delicious foods. And his sort of signature recipe in the book is based on a recipe that Jeremy Fox, who's a wonderful chef, he has a couple restaurants here in Santa Monica. And over a decade ago, my husband and I ate at his then restaurant in Northern California called Ubuntu, and we had this strawberry pizza, and I just loved it so much. And I have since altered it, you know, altered the recipe mostly because I'm not making my own pizza dough every Sunday, but
Okay.
every Sunday I make a version of that strawberry pizza. So I was so excited to put it in the book.
Oh, I want that recipe. Oh, I want that
Yes.
recipe. We do make pizza. Oh, we buy the dough. We,
Yes, yes, yes,
most pizza
yes.
places you can buy the dough.
Yes,
That's the little
exactly.
secret.
It's a great hack.
It's our yeah. And believe me, sometimes it's like we want this. Can you go down and get that? You
Yes.
know, da, da, da. Now I also know that you listen to a song on repeat when you read,
Yes.
right? And last
Yes.
time it was a Bruce Springsteen song. So what
Yeah.
was the song you listened to this time?
This was a Noah Kahn song. I actually listened to several songs on that album at different points of the editing and the writing. But the one that I listened to primarily for most of it was a song called You're Gonna Go Far, which is a beautiful song. And I imagined in some ways that Liam was singing this to the children from the great beyond.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm gonna go listen to that one. And that
Oh,
that
it's so
song on
beautiful. He's
that
so
song on
wonderful.
Spotify is up
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Thanks to Laura.
Yes, yes,
Listen to it
yes,
over and
yes.
over. So how do you do it on repeat? You just hit it so that it
I
repeats?
just hit it and it just sticks. It just I buy the song, I buy the whole
Yeah,
album when
right,
it's
right, right.
that, and then I just hit
Stick it.
repeat, you know?
Okay. Maybe she was on Spotify, she would have made more.
Yeah.
Think about that.
You know, sometimes I do listen to it on Spotify as well.
Yeah,
Yes. So
just to get it,
I'm
you know, just
definitely he's quite popular at this point, but I have been a fan for a long time. And one of his other songs, Maine, also I listened to when I was working on this book. And that has been he wrote that song came out in 2020. So that also kept me company.
have you told him this
No.
is a song? Be a
Yeah.
great like sidebar piece. Think about the piece. Think about the piece. Why I chose
Good
this.
idea.
So when do your editor, I know your editor and agent get to see this? Like at what point do you finish the whole thing and then say okay, or you say, here's a little bit?
I finish it. Mary Sue Rucci, who's my editor, who I know you're also quite close to, I don't send her anything until I'm several drafts in
Mhm,
because I really need to know exactly where I'm going before I give it to her. And also because her opinion matters to me so much that
mhm,
I want it to be, you know, I think of this book as a love letter. And I want it to be so close to done that when she reads it she can do her magic and we can get in there together, but that the book is really really close, so she's reading so that there's not that's the only way I know how to do it. I don't know how to
right,
even say it
right.
another way. I have
Yeah.
to be really close.
Yeah, you have to be close to what you've
Yeah.
exactly feeling, but then how we're going to ramp it up. There are the ways to
Yes.
ramp it up. So was
Yes.
this always the title?
Yes, that
It's
was
always the
always the
title.
title.
I'm just like, okay.
Oh, I'm trying to remember if when I turned it into her that was the title. I think it was.
Yeah,
I
then I
think this was
lost it.
always the title.
And
I
I
think
keep
at some
mixing it
point.
up with the other book. I
Yeah,
keep
well, it's, you know what? I didn't even realize that it was a little similar. It's a little similar. So, yeah, so I get that. I get why.
yeah.
I totally get why.
So I love the cover. I love the cover. And what
Thank
I
you.
really love is you get some idea of what's going on, but you don't have a
Mhm.
lot. There's like the
Yes,
boardwalk, there's not a lot of what's happening.
yes,
I'm really doing badly on the light. I'm getting this right. There we go. And it
yes,
goes over here.
yes.
There we go. But I also love that your entire backlist has been rejacketed. So the books have this familiarity to them, which I think is
Yes.
really incredible. And that means you've reached a place that you're as a writer that they want you to say, oh, Laura Dave book, huh? Yeah.
Well, I love that. And I love the way they rejacketed them. I feel very happy that they did that. 800 Grapes, which that's when you and I met, I
Yes.
believe. Or 800
Yes.
Grapes.
Yes.
And I love the new jacket for that. Like that's a book that's very close to my heart too.
Mhm,
And because I think in different ways all the books speak to each other. And so it
mhm.
feels nice to me that they have kind of a uniform now. I'm very
Right,
happy about
right.
that.
Look to the books. Look to the
Yes.
books. Okay, Julia Whalen, amazing, amazing narrator,
right?
narrates the audio, performs the
Uh,
audio. Have
yes.
you been able to hear the final version yet? Have you heard it yet?
Yes.
She's amazing.
She's really incredible. She's
Yeah.
really incredible. It's so funny because, they always ask early on, do you want to do it? Who can you imagine? And I really wanted her to do it. She was
Mhm.
my first call, my first choice. And I just feel so lucky that she said yes.
Yeah, she's really, really terrific. I was listening to this morning to an advanced copy, and she lends everything that we need for the book. Like it's
Yes.
everything is there. Characters, voices, every single thing, nuances, really, really, really there. And sometimes it doesn't happen with an audiobook, but
No,
she
she
nails
crushes.
it. Yeah.
She really does. And I love that because when I talk about wanting this book to feel like a love letter and a book that you read aloud, like she really realizes that for the book.
Hmm.
And I'm just really grateful.
Yeah. In fact, I want to listen to more, which is interesting because I've already read the book.
Oh, I'll
So there
take
we
that.
go.
That makes me so happy.
So the film rights for The White Night We Lost Him were picked
Yes.
up by Netflix very quickly, very,
Yes.
very quickly. And you and your husband, Josh Singer, worked together on The Last Thing You Told Me, which I believe was on Apple. Was it on
Yes.
Apple? Yeah. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
So are you writing the screenplay together again for the
We
night?
are. We are writing this for Netflix. And when I get back from book tour, we're going to sort of dig in a larger way. We've started working on it, but we're very excited. I'm very excited to write this one as a movie, and yeah, we can't wait. We can't wait.
You know what I really, really love is that the way you talk about the two of you writing together, because
Yeah.
you were a writer, he's a writer, he was a
Yes.
screenwriter before you were a screenwriter. You've got to
Yes.
learn these things. Do you actually sit down and write together? I remember what you saying that you wrote an episode, he wrote an episode. Like, how did it end up going? Was it that way
Yeah.
or?
It's usually that I do the first draft. I draft first, because I'm the one that's closest to the characters because of the book. In some ways, and it's, he's my favorite writer.
Mhm,
And so it's really, I feel very lucky to get to write with him. I usually write a draft and then he comes in and does another draft and then we start working together.
mhm,
But I've always said, TV and movies require different things than books.
mhm,
And so people are saying to me, there's going to be a season 2 of The Last Thing He Told Me, which I'm not going to be involved with because I'm writing the sequel at the same time.
mhm.
But I always think like, I just feel so lucky that that people care about these characters and that the life gets to go on in that way. And understand that movies and books were, they're different. They require different things. And he's just able with The Night We Lost Him too, to sort of walk me through like, well, this is how we make this visual and this is how we actualize this. And it is such a treat to get to work with him. I think a lot of people are surprised. They're like, oh my God, I couldn't work with my spouse. But I think because we've always been each other's first reader, that
Mhm.
it's really natural to collaborate together.
Yeah. And just so those who don't know, her husband is Josh Singer, who won an Academy Award for Spotlight and
Yes,
was
yes.
nominated this year. And I just want you to know that I'm watching when his name comes up to see what Laura's wearing. Okay.
Oh, I
I just
love
want you to know that I want to see
that.
Laura on the red carpet. So I'm wearing the red carpet for nobody else but watching what Laura is going to be wearing. So it's like very, very fun. So
Oh, that's so nice.
it's nice to have somebody who's in a different medium, but the medium
Yeah,
you're moving into to be
yeah,
able to sit there and say, all right, I see where this is going and I see where this can go. So
yes,
wait,
yes,
so there's going to be a sequel to The Last Thing He Told Me.
yes.
Besides what you're writing in the book, they're going to be two different things.
So I'm writing the sequel, which will come out next fall.
Huh?
And then the show will come out shortly thereafter. So
Okay.
I sat with the writers' room, and they know, the scope of the book because I have a draft. And then they're gonna take some liberties and do what they're gonna do, but I'm sure they'll be speaking to each other. I can't actually, it's interesting. I can't read the scripts right now, not until I really turn in the book because
Right,
I can't be influenced,
right, right.
about I have to sort of keep my head down. But there's such a wonderful team, involved with this. Jennifer Garner is the dream,
Mhm.
Hannah Hall,
Yes.
and she's cares so much about that character, and it's in very good hands. It's in very
Yeah.
good hands.
She was perfect. She was
Yeah.
absolutely perfect, you know. And I know there was another person that was supposed to play the part, and you really realized that would have been good, but this is really fantastic.
Oh,
You just
yeah.
saw her,
It's
right there.
wonderful.
Any news about casting for The Night We Lost Him yet, or still quiet?
We're not there yet.
Okay.
We're gonna write the script and then go from there.
Mhm.
So right now Nora in my head is still Nora in the
Yeah.
book. So we'll
So
see.
now okay, so if you're doing it for Netflix, does it happen faster? Like what will be on like quicker than
I
doing
hope
something?
so. I
Yeah.
hope so. We uh they preempted that very quickly,
Mhm.
and Kira Goldberg, we have a long term who works at Netflix, is it's just us and her in the foxhole together, and
Wow.
so we're very excited.
Yeah, yeah, like move things ahead, move things
Yeah.
ahead. Besides writing the script, so you're involved in this step casting. Do you go on set? Do you go on set at all?
So I don't so Josh goes on set more than me. I went on set sometimes for the last thing he told me. I like being on set for like a little bit, but I'm really an introvert and a homebody, and I am the one that's grabbing our son at 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day. So for limited windows, I hang out at the crafts table pretty much. But Hello Sunshine, who's the producer on the show, has been so wonderful, and Lauren Levy-Newstatter, Reese Witherspoon, and they're just wonderful. And for the movie, I don't even know how that will go yet, but it will probably be Josh. Josh is the extrovert of the two of us, and he's the one that
Well,
goes
do you
to
know what's
set.
really interesting too is I remember seeing you, there was an event at the 92nd Street Y, and they were
Yes,
talking about how Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine Company feels so much about working with women that they get
yes,
to be home with their children at night. She does
yes,
not want to be shooting those overnight, ridiculous, we're going to be till 3 in the morning kinds of
yes,
things.
yes.
And that was a big takeaway for me from how she runs her company, because a
Hmm.
lot of people don't care. It's about the
Yeah,
numbers, it's about getting it, such and such done. And I thought that was really it's a caring about the people as well
yeah,
as everything
yes.
else.
That is really true.
But do you still get a chair with your name on it? You need to get the chair
I
with your
do. I
name.
get a chair with my name on it, which is really lovely.
And then
That's
soon your
really
office
lovely.
will have all the chairs with your name on it, and then your son will be saying, "Mom, don't you know your name?" Like really, they didn't put your name on a chair for you to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So we're going to probably see another book from you next fall, which will be
Yes.
quick. Last time
Yeah.
it
That's
was
quick for me. That is quick
quick.
for me.
A
Yes.
lot of
Yes.
people moving away from book a year. No, no, no. Laura moves into the book a year. Here we go.
This will probably be the only time, but because unless I do another sequel, it's so wonderful to be back with Hannah and back in her world. Like it's cozy and wonderful. And so I think if it was a brand new book, I think I'd need my 2 years, my new song, all of it. Yeah.
So, okay, one more question. You're going to get on a plane. You're going a lot of places. When
Yes.
you're on a plane, I know you hate leaving home. I know.
Yeah.
I'll see you, I promise. But
Yeah.
okay, so
Oh,
as
that makes me feel better. I'm so
you
happy.
feel better, there'll be people go see her in every city and say hi. Just say,
Yes,
hey,
that
listen to
will
the
make me
interview.
feel better. Yes.
So, okay, so you're on the plane. Can you can you think of an idea? Can you see something happening and just scroll something down and say,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I can absolutely do that. I actually don't mind planes at all.
Mm-mm.
Um, I find them cozy, and often they're an excuse to read for hours on end, which
Yes.
is wonderful.
Yes.
So I already have all my books with me. I have some of them that I'm taking. I'm taking this book, which I'm rereading, which is really, I recommend it highly. Love
Oh,
Triangle.
okay.
How Trigonometry Shapes the World. I love a great nonfiction book.
Okay.
And I love The Wedding People. I don't know if you
Yeah.
read The
Wedding
Wedding.
people. Yep.
Wonderful. So I'm going back and reading some of her other books. So I have all my books packed. I have none of my clothes packed, but all my books are packed. So
That was me
well, I
leaving.
guess these aren't, but yeah,
That
they're
was me
ready.
leaving a couple of weeks ago. You can go back and see the picture about how much luggage I had as a result.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I actually brought all my swimming stuff, like the weights, the clipboard,
Mhm.
like every single thing, and shoved them
Yeah.
in a suitcase. So on the way back, they say to me they're going to charge me $100 because it's over, like $100. And I
Yeah.
just reached in, took the weights, hand them to my husband, and go, here, put these someplace. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're not getting $100 from me for a pair of weights. That's it.
That's amazing.
I just threw all my clothes in. I didn't, we were delayed, a bunch of stuff had happened, and our flight was actually 24 hours earlier than I thought it was.
Oh my
So we
gosh.
just threw everything and ran.
Yes,
Not good.
exactly.
Not good. Look,
Yeah.
this is a treat. This has been such a treat to get to spend
Oh,
time with you.
that's how I feel about you. So thank you so much. I adore talking to you. So thank you for
Oh,
having me again.
and I can't wait to read, to have everybody go reading and telling us what they think about The Night We Lost Him,
Oh
because
yes,
it's,
please. I love when people reach out. Best place to do it is Laura Dave Author at Instagram. So please reach out. And I can't believe I get to see you on Saturday. I'm
I
so
don't get to see you on
excited.
Saturday. So looking forward to it. And to our viewers, we look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks to you. Thanks so much for joining us today.